Brock Purdy and many other 49ers back for the beginning of phase one offseason program begins in Santa Clara for the 49ers. Some interesting comments about his recovery from Brock Purdy, what to look into those. And what about this tight end need? Why are 49ers scouting so many tight ends for the 2023 NFL draft? Coming up on this episode of Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Recording our second podcast of the day. We didn't get the late Sunday one in because I was busy, Croc, hosting the ultimate mock draft, the Locked On Network mock draft special, which is coming Thursday this week. And all the recording has been done. Now that is in the hands of the editors, and it's an extravaganza, always super fun. Croc involved making the 49ers pick. I'm hosting along with Matt Williamson, Keith of the Locked On NFL draft crew. So it was a whole bunch of fun. Everybody from the network, all the NFL side of the network, all the college side of the network gets involved as they do every year. And it always gets bigger and better every single year. So looking forward to that coming up.
And Ross Jackson, who, he's kind of the point guard throughout all this, sounds really excited. He sounds really hyped. He's doing a lot of editing right now. And he's like, man, I am blown away by the quality of this. So, man, Locked On Network is very interesting because it's not, there are some kind of people that are like, bigger names and whatnot, but it's local scouts or local talents. And I'm surprised more people don't try to steal this format, because who knows more about the teams than people that are right there involved in it, right? Like, this isn't us listening to Adam Schefter talk about everything in particular about the 49ers. This is some legit knowledge on, not just all the NFL teams, but NFL, NBA, MLB. They got, HBCU sports. They got SEC network. They got college. They got, it's everything. And it's truly amazing. And I'm just happy and blessed to be a part of such a great just platform, man. It's amazing. And this draft show is going to be really big.
Yeah, it's really cool to see all of them. And it was fun going through that and hosting the thing again with Matt Williamson and seeing all the talent, seeing all the picks and having fun and seeing everybody react to the picks. And you're really going to want to tune into this mock draft. It's really a cool event that we do every single year. And yeah, so many people listen to, I remember a couple of years ago, Doris Burke, NBA, right? She covers the NBA and is one of the broadcasters and one of the best in the biz. And she's like, every time I'm getting ready to go cover a new game, I tune into those teams' Locked On shows and learn about the teams. It's awesome. Kay Adams recently was talking about that as well to one of our hosts. So it's really cool. And the name's out there, and people know that when they want the best local coverage, they come to the Locked On Podcast Network. And so that's why we're here, Croc. And what's going on with the 49ers? Getting back at it. Phase one offseason program begins. We got to start, though, with the quote that I think Croc's probably being blown out of proportion, taken out of context a little bit from Brock Purdy, who was asked about his recovery from the UCL surgery and asked about if he could miss the season. And his quote was something that might scare some 49ers fans. And I don't know if him saying that he's not sure exactly if he's going to miss the season or not was, it was more like, okay, this is what I think is going to happen, Croc. I think Brock Purdy's going to be asked about it again because of that vagueness. And he's going to be like, well, you said you might not even play this season. And he's going to be like, no, I'm just saying that I don't know what the outcome is going to be. And that's one of the possibilities that could happen. Is, somewhat of a, I don't know who's going to be alive Sunday, Shanahan-y quote. Maybe that's why Shanahan likes Brock Purdy so much, because they think the same.
Right. That was like for a long time, Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. They kind of, the way they communicated everything in the public was like very kind of similar with the same cadence.
Yeah.
As it pertains to Brock Purdy, I do think it's very Kyle Shanahan-like, where Shanahan, I think a lot of people think that Shanahan is lying when he says things in the press conferences. I don't think so. Now look, I could be giving him just the benefit of the doubt, and maybe I'm naive, but he seems very upfront with a lot of things. And when he doesn't want to tell you something, he says something along the lines of, I don't know if we'll be alive tomorrow. Or he'll give you a very a-hole type answer that's very clear that he doesn't want to answer that question, or, he'll try to spin it on you. But for the most part, he's very upfront with everything. With their handling of players, with Brandon Ayuk. Oh yeah, Brandon Ayuk, he wouldn't have played the previous year if we would have been healthier at receiver. Like, they're very open about their entire process of everything, and sometimes maybe too open, especially with John Lynch as well. So when he talks about injuries, what does he do? When Kyle was talking about injuries, people think that he's like lying about things, and I don't think so. I think he's just telling you the information that he's been given. So a lot of times coaches will get either a report from their training staff or the doctors, and hey, what's going on with such and such? Oh, this is what's going on. These are the things that we can do, etc. Not sure the timetable, or maybe he'll be back tomorrow. And then they'll monitor it and see. And then he comes to the media. Media asks, hey, what's going on with such and such? And he just says what the doctor says, and that could change, right? Like, those are things that's kind of a little bit more of a fluid situation. People think that he's lying. I don't think so. So as it pertains to Brock Purdy, bring it back full circle, Brock Purdy is probably answering this the way that he's been told, where, hey, everything looks like it's on schedule, looks like you're healing fine. You can go ahead and take the brace off, looks like good. But hey, if there's a setback, maybe there's a chance that you have to miss the rest of the year. We don't foresee that happening. And maybe he's just repeating what they're saying, but left out maybe some of the context.
Well, and whenever a doctor also is talking to you about things, they're not going to give you just the best possible prognosis and not talk about. And a lot of times, what they do is give you the worst, because they want you to know what that could also be as well. And it's funny because when you hear Kyle talk about it after John Lynch talked about it, and then I think it also just highlights how we're not really sure what this is going to look like. Not a lot of players have had this injury, and so it could be quick, could take a little bit longer, could miss no games, could miss a couple games. Who knows? Maybe if things don't go great, could miss the whole season. We don't know yet. And as far as his rehab so far, Purdy did say that, quote, just working on some simple things like range of motion, slowly integrating things to get some strength back. But for the most part, everything is going as planned. And every week I feel like I'm getting better. And he also said he's been shooting texts back and forth with Trey Lance, who's also coming off of his own injury, and is going to be at the facility and with the rest of the guys as things get going here in the first phase of the 49ers offseason. And 49ers actually adding a wide receiver too, Chris Conley, to the mix. So adding another veteran wide receiver, adding Kerry Hyder back to the team as well. So the 49ers getting their ducks in a row a little bit here before the NFL draft starts.
Chris Conley, big receiver that can stretch the field in his prime. Like, am I saying his prime? I mean, at one point it was like, he could run. He could run, and he can catch the vertical pushing passes. Matter of fact, he did so if you go back, matter of fact, for first year for the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan, 2017 preseason game against the Kansas City Chiefs. It was the first one. He caught a ball down the sideline. So Tyreek Hill caught a big ball, and Chris Conley caught a big ball as well. Don't ask me why I remember that, but he's a guy that's kind of more of what his thing is. Now, is he just doing it at like a super high level? I think one team, can't think of the name of it right now, expected him to be, hey, can you really kind of help produce for us? But outside of that, he's just kind of been hey, come in, maybe stretch the field. If not, cool. Feels like more of a 15 to 20 catch a year type of guy. And we'll see if he's able to stick on the 49ers. I think it'd be tough.
Yep. Right now, he's probably going to be competing with one of those 11 draft picks that the 49ers select if they do take a wide receiver in this class. And but the 49ers are doing the thing where they need to make sure that they don't have to take anything in any spot, and they have enough guys to work through the offseason and practice and be ready for the season, no matter what happens. Covering for injuries, covering for whatever happens on draft day if they're maybe not able to get a position in a certain spot like they plan to be able to do.
I have his stats pulled up. So
he ran like a 4.3, didn't he? Like 6'2" and fast.
Yeah,
very straight line guy.
He was a fast guy. Over the last 2 years, not getting anything out of him. He's only played 9 games over the last 2 years. Oh no, never mind. That was 2022. He played on 2 different teams. So. But he only had he played in 9 games last year. That's what that is. And only had 4 catches. So definitely not much going on there. But prior to that, there were some times where he was a little bit more productive. Had 32 catches in 2018, 47 2019, 40 in 2020, and then it started to kind of tail off from there. So uh, he's a guy, he can stretch the field, average 16 yards per catch in one season, almost 16 in another year with Kansas City. So again, I don't think the 49ers are expecting much out of him, but it's a guy that can do something and bring a different element to what the 49ers have right now. And maybe he's just insurance for Danny Gray, where it's like, hey, we want Danny Gray to be able to do these things that we've seen Conley do in his career at different points. Can you start to catch on, Danny? And if not, then we might start to kind of look for a more veteran option and eventually getting younger.
Yeah, definitely insurance, injury insurance. We saw it last year with, was it Marcus Johnson, and there was 2 or 3 veteran receivers. They're kind of battling for maybe the last spot on the roster and maybe no spots on the roster that end up being left. And I think it's a very similar situation this year. Kerry Hyder as well added to what's starting to be a pretty deep defensive line list, Croc. I want to talk about if there's even any spots available for a rookie on the defensive line, because they've already got numbers at that position. And why are the 49ers so interested in tight ends? Why have they been scouting every tight end, meeting with every tight end before the 2023 NFL draft, what it means and why it doesn't really mean anything for one current 49ers tight end in particular? Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Grand slams, no hitters. Oh, yeah, it's baseball season as well as draft season. No better place to get in on the Major League Baseball action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. And not just Major League Baseball. We've got NBA playoffs. We've got NHL playoffs. We've got, of course, the NFL draft, tons of draft props. They're growing in numbers all the time. The numbers are changing all the time. Some interesting stuff happened at the top of the NFL draft right now with some of those betting odds as well. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. So let me read off the list of defensive linemen currently on the 49ers roster now, after the 49ers brought back Kerry Hyder for one more run here at Croc. So here we go. The 49ers currently have 12 defensive linemen. We've got Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw, Drake Jackson, Cleveland Farrell, Kevin Givens, T.Y. McGill, Kalia Davis, the red shirt rookie from last year in the 6th round, Austin Bryant, Alex Barnett, and then Kerry Hyder has been added to that list recently. What I see there is more size than athleticism off the edge. So to me, if I'm looking at that list of 12 defensive linemen, first of all, some of those guys can't make the roster because the Niners only break camp with 9 or 10 usually. And if you add a rookie to that as well, that means 3 or 4 of those guys aren't going to make the roster. So is defensive line a need at all for the 49ers going into the 2023 draft?
I would say no, but probably for different reasons than other people. If you're telling me that they need a dominant guy opposite Nick Bosa and you're still kind of worried about that, then I do think edge rusher is a need. But if you are saying, look, you pick late in the 3rd round, ideally you're just likely not going to get a game changer at that position, then you might as well throw as many veteran resources at that position and see what you get out of Drake Jackson. So from that standpoint, I would say no. But if you were telling me, hey, man, you got an opportunity to go get Will Anderson, I would say, well, 100% you go get that guy, right? Or even anybody else that is considered a top edge rusher with very high upside. But again, those guys are being taken in the top 15 picks typically.
Looking at that list of names, Croc, is there a player that's less than like 270?
What?
And that's like Drake Jackson might be the only one, and we don't know what his weight is. I would assume they want him to come in less than 270, but he was 270 last year, right? Around draft time.
Right.
Austin Bryant, Is he 260?
Yeah, I think Austin Bryant. I don't think he's 270.
Okay.
Let's see. I'll
Farrell's
pull
a
this
bigger
stuff up right
defensive
now.
end.
250. So Austin Bryant's listed at 6'5", 250.
Oh, 250. Okay. So so he's the lightest one. But I do feel like that's probably where they might be angling in the draft, because just looking at the defensive ends, Bosa and Drake Jackson. Then you've got Eric Armstead, who can't play some end, probably play a lot of tackle. Cleveland Farrell's a bigger end. Kerry Hyder is a bigger
By the
end.
way, Farrell is listed at 265.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh, he's a thick guy. I'd be surprised if he's actually 265. Maybe he is, though.
But again, I mean, we're talking about his weight that he entered the NFL with. I bet his weight could fluctuate, go up and down, give or take 10 pounds. And
he probably did the combine thing that I think is more and more common too, where you get as light as possible if you want to improve your speed, and then you run, and then you go back to your normal weight and you don't run anymore for the rest of your life and get any more times.
Right.
So maybe I'm misreading it, but there is room for, I think, a situational rusher, which is probably all you can hope for in the third round anyway. So that might be what the 49ers are gearing up for here. They got a ton of tackles. They've got some guys who can play outside in. Maybe some speed to compete with Drake Jackson, Austin Bryant for one of those final roster spots along the edge.
Austin Bryant feels like a guy, and again, I don't want to, make it seem like I have all these just super high expectations for him, but that kind of thing we've seen with 49ers defensive linemen when they get under Kasurek, where it's just like, and I think he's been under Kasurek before, but where they just, hey man, this guy, like, he's playing very well.
Yeah.
And I could see him just being that guy. Where's there's Brian with a sack.
That's probably
then, he ends the season with 6 sacks, and it's like, hey, that was pretty good production out of him.
I'm sure Cleveland Farrell. That's probably why they signed with the 49ers. They want to get that Kasurek bump, maybe get paid like past 1 year wonders with the 49ers have been. So we'll see what that ends up looking like. Drake Jackson's the one, though. Like, Drake Jackson's the one you're hoping steps up a defense across from Bosa and becomes a dude in year 2.
And here's the thing about the NFL. If it doesn't happen for him this year, then he's going to be kind of one of these guys that's kind of ends up being like a journeyman. Because like, that's how it happens. You have your opportunity when you're drafted, and it's like, hey, second round pick, late second. He's one of the last picks in the second round, but second round pick, we're going to give you opportunities. But at some point, you are no longer a second round pick. You are just an NFL player, and you have to compete against these other NFL players. So they would like him to be able to beat guys out because, hey, we invested, a certain amount of draft capital. We done paid you some money. We want you to beat out Bryant. We want you to beat out Cleveland Farrell and Kerry Hyder. But if these guys that are pros, and you got to understand the way some of these guys are approaching the game, like they take care of their families this way. These dudes got wives, kids. This is their livelihood, and that's how they approach it. So some of these younger guys, I don't think they understand like that. Like they don't grasp that concept yet because they just been playing football. Like, man, I've been playing all my life. But like, there's grown men, and that's how they take care of their family. That's how they feed their family. So you got to be able to compete with those guys. And if you don't have the same type of approach from them, you can find yourself kind of just dwindling away a little bit and just kind of being a guy. Still being in the NFL, you'll make a little money, but not what the opportunity is, which we see right now. I mean, what is Nick Bosa going to get? Right? Like, it's like, dude, how do you watch, and not saying they're the same type of prospect, clearly you see where Bosa was drafted and where Drake Jackson was drafted, but how do you watch Nick Bosa about to get $30 million a year, like just ridiculous amount of money, and not say, man, I need to be doing everything in my power to get that like generational money to like help myself, help my family. Like, we're good forever if I do that. And all I have to do is make sure that I approach the game the right way. And I think sometimes it's kind of tough because real quick, one guy, I remember when I was in the NFL, and this guy said, man, I've never had a job. Like, outside of football, never had a job. And I think sometimes these guys don't truly understand like what's at stake and what's at hand, because like you go from never having a job, I'm in the NFL, of course I'm here, to dang, can I get on with this arena team and you ain't making the same money? Then boom, real world hits you.
Yeah. And then you're job hunting for the first time.
And then you better hope that you get on Locked On Network or something.
That's right.
and talk about your experiences that didn't last very long.
It's funny, and it's really interesting that you mentioned that too. Like, for example, someone like Kerry Hyder. He's been around the league now a little bit. He's a veteran player. He knows this might be even his last season. But he's going to do all the right things. He's going to do everything he can to win a roster spot and get that last paycheck and play that last season and make that last roster if it is the end for him. Or maybe
remember, guys like him, if he's on the roster week 1, his contract for the year is guaranteed. So that's what they're gunning for. It's like, look, I need to be there. And, obviously the 49ers know what he can bring, but that's what he's thinking about.
Interesting D-line room there for the San Francisco 49ers. Will they add one more, maybe even two more in the NFL draft? They will have a lot of numbers, and maybe that's the way to play this thing without high draft picks. Throw the most amount of numbers in the room and let the best 9-10 win. Next, Croc. I want to talk about the 49ers quarterback room. We just saw a massive new contract for Jalen Hurts. Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, all put together, making a fraction of that, and how that team is built for the 49ers with a cheaper quarterback room. And what about the tight end position? Why are the 49ers scouting so many tight ends? Next. Thanks, everybody, once again for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Shout out to all the everydayers wherever you are. Appreciate you. Tomorrow we've got another Winky Wednesday episode coming. Make sure for your second lesson you check out Locked On NFL Draft, Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes as we get ready for draft season. So much fun here, and stay tuned later this week for the Locked On Network's Ultimate Mock Draft 2023. So, were you surprised how much money Jalen Hurts got, Croc? 5 years, $255, which means $51 million per year. We'll see how the money breaks out, because clearly that was, from the agent. We'll see what the numbers actually are when people look into the contract and see if it's, structured in a way that doesn't seem like that much money. But that's a lot for a guy who's had one really good season in the NFL.
Right. We talked about generational changing amount of money, and that's definitely that. We do have a breakdown here from Adam Schefter, and 2023 is actually only 6.1 million. And then after that, it starts to just become more and more. And I think there might be some like void years or something in there that makes it like be more, because you just look at the numbers here. I don't see 255 million. I see 6.1, 13.5, 21.7, 31.7. So I don't know where the rest of that money is. Maybe that's his cap hit, or I don't know, it's something signing bonus. I don't know how that stuff works.
Maybe those are the base salaries, and with not including any of his guarantees or his signing bonus.
Yeah, but yeah, I just think that's a lot of money, right? For somebody who he did well the prior year, and then last year obviously very well, and then it's like, all right, now we got to pay you a lot of money, and that's tough. And at the end of the day, that's what you have to do at the quarterback position. Listen, a lot of people kind of writing off Trey Lance right now, and we'll figure out what that situation is. But let's say, hypothetically speaking, you got Brock Purdy who's saying, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be able to play this year, right? And we think he is. But let's say, hypothetically speaking, he doesn't play. And Trey Lance just goes and balls out. Well, you kind of put yourself in a little pickle here.
Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to pay him a lot of money. Because, look, we're talking about Jalen Hurts. But there's some other guys that are about to get paid. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, right? I mean, like, Tua, they're going to have to pay him. He's not going to get what the other guys got. But, like, there's some guys from those classes that just big time money, especially Joe Burrow. He's probably going to be the highest paid player ever in NFL history. But Trey Lance, if he just, oh, man, I have this opportunity. This guy's hurt, can't play this year. I got a ball. He goes out there, does very well. Maybe they're just like, well, we just pick up his fifth-year option. But then if he goes and then leads the team to a Super Bowl, how much is it going to cost? And again, I know I'm going to get a Trey Lance can't even get on the field, right? We're going to get all kind of pushback. I'm just, listen, it's hypothetical that we're talking right now. But you just don't know, and it's a lot of money. And it really kind of changes the way you build your team. Like, what is that going to do for the Eagles down the line? Doesn't look like it's going to hurt them too much this year, but down the line, you start losing players, and Jalen Hurts is going to be asked to carry a roster.
So this from Field Yates, now that Jalen Hurts is averaging $51 million per year, the most in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers, second, $49 million per year. Kyler Murray, $46.1 million per year average. Deshaun Watson, $46 million. Patrick Mahomes had the 10-year, $450 million contract. So he's 45 per and starts to look like one of the steal contracts, even though when that happened, it was like, what? $500 million, 10-year contract for Patrick Mahomes. And that's going to look like a steal for the Chiefs after the rest of these contracts keep coming in for the latest round of young superstar quarterbacks. Josh Allen, $43 million per year. Daniel Jones, $40 million per year. Matthew Stafford, $40 million, and Dak Prescott also $40 million. So those three tied for 7. So when you look at where the money is going for the 49ers, it's not going to the quarterback position as much. Trey Lance, $8.5 million cap hit this year. Sam Darnold's a 5.1, and 3.5 of that's guaranteed. And then Brock Purdy's making as cheap, the least amount you could make as a potential starting quarterback, which is $934,000, so less than $1 million. So 49ers right around $15 million for their quarterback room if all three of those guys do make the roster and are on the team and not traded this year. So that gives them an advantage to pay other guys like Bosa and Trent Williams and Kittle and Fred Warner and Charvarius Ward and everybody that's getting paid on the 49ers that makes it possible. But Brock Purdy, if he turns out to be the dude, couple years, we're going to see something crazy. If Trey Lance gets his shot, turns out to be a dude, in a couple years, we're going to see something crazy. So,
and there's no way around it either.
Yeah.
Right? Like there isn't any, well, let's try to take the cheap option. Like you can't. The only cheap option is to like keep drafting quarterbacks that are good enough to win with this roster, which this roster, I mean, at some point it's going to get old, right? And you're going to have to try to replenish that. And that's how you see sometimes this kind of reloading or rebuilding.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the only way to work around this. Keep drafting guys that you feel like, hey, we could put this guy in position to win. So you had Trey Lance, and it's like, and then you got Brock Purdy. It's like, okay, let's go. And then, all right, Brock, like we really like you, almost like a Washington Commanders with Kirk Cousins. What they kept stringing it along. All right, we're gonna franchise tag him because it was like, hey, we really like you, but not enough to pay you what the market says. And he went to Minnesota, and what has he really done there? You had the miracle, Minnesota Miracle, whatever. But outside that, they ain't really done much with Kirk Cousins, and they paid him a lot of money. So, like, was Commanders right or wrong? Or I mean, I guess Commanders were wrong because they haven't had a quarterback even like that good to replace him. But they're not wrong in the sense of you're really not that guy.
Yeah, I wonder if the 49ers accidentally stumbled upon a game plan. Instead of going cheap running backs and not signing them to second contracts, they're going to pay running backs and not pay quarterbacks. So maybe that's what the 49ers are going to do. They're like, let's keep doing this. We're going to the NFC Championship game with every quarterback, so let's just keep going and not pay for a big-time quarterback.
Keep swinging. Keep swinging on late-round guys that can win games.
Last note here on today's podcast, and we had a shout out from Sydney, Australia, I believe. Let's go back and find this tweet. This is from JMCC. It says, hello from Sydney. Love the podcast. Listen to your tight end edition yesterday. What was your view, if any, on Charlie Warner coming out of college? Has he over delivered on ability? What does he need to do, or can he do to make the leap? Appreciate you, JMCC, John, for listening to the pod all the way from Sydney, Australia. We've been shouting out some of our international listeners lately, and this is a topic I wanted to talk about on the podcast with tight end, because a lot of people, when looking at tight ends for this draft and seeing that the 49ers are scouting tight ends heavily in a really good tight end class, the ultimate conclusion is something about, George Kittle's turning 30 and this is the tight end 2 now, but he's going to be the future tight end 1, and that's going to be the end of George Kittle. I don't think looking for a tight end has anything to do with George Kittle right now. And certainly that could be the plan, and you get a really good player at tight end, and then George Kittle's contract runs out, and you know, or he gets hurt or whatever it is, and then you end up having a different starting tight end that you drafted and developed. And then, you know, that's a possibility. I could see that happening. But I don't think that's necessarily the plan for the 49ers. I think the 49ers have been pretty disappointed with what they've been getting after George Kittle. And one of those is probably Charlie Warner. And they brought in a bunch of guys to compete with him last year. You know, Tyler Kroft ended up being the second tight end. And so I think it's more putting Ross Dwelly, Charlie Warner on notice and wanting to get better production out of their second tight end and having a tight end they feel good about in the 2 spot, but also that can start when Kittle is injured. And here's the other part of it, Croc, is once Kyle Juszczyk's contract runs out, there's not like a lot of Kyle Juszczyks out there. So do you need to replace Juszczyk not with a fullback, but basically by going more to tight end, having more of an H-back type, a guy that can move around and do those things. So I wonder if it's even more about replacing Juszczyk eventually with the next tight end rather than George Kittle.
Well, remember Ross Dwelly came in, and there were times where Juszczyk missed some games. I think even 2019, he was out for a few games or so, and who filled in? It was Ross Dwelly who did a lot of those things. So clearly they have somewhat of a plan. I would like to see Kyle like throw a curveball at people, right? It's like, hey, I've been running this kind of offense with this fullback, but now I'm going to go more McVay style, where maybe some of the concepts are similar. Again, I'm not an offensive guru guy, but I'm coming from a similar, background. McVay does it different. He runs more 11 personnel, one back, one tight end, and he has 3 receivers on the field. And maybe it's more beneficial when you have a Cooper Kupp out there. He makes it pretty easy for you to keep 3 receivers out there. But maybe Kyle's like, all right, I'm gonna go 3 receiver set heavy. We're gonna be the most we're gonna run the most 3 receiver sets in the entire NFL, kind of like how we've seen from the Rams. And all of a sudden he kind of revamps himself, reevaluates himself, right? Somebody asked us, hey, do you guys ever go back and kind of look at, things that you hit on or didn't hit on? And we had that whole conversation. Maybe Kyle was like, hey, let me go back and figure out different ways to kind of reinvent what I'm doing offensively and kind of throw a curveball at everybody who thinks they're catching on to what I'm doing. So that's something that they could potentially do. But as far as the tight end thing, that's their fault. If you are banking on Ross Dwelly and Charlie Warner and Croft to be like legit tight end 2s, like what resource did you really spend on those guys? I know you struck on George Kittle, but if you want a legit tight end 2, put some more resources into it. Go and trade. There's been guys like that have been legit guys coming out in the NFL, like TJ Hawkinson. I'm not saying go get TJ Hawkinson, but Vikings went and got him, right? Like and again, it doesn't have to be to that extent, but go get a guy that's either on the market and is a big time tight end that could really help. What did the New England Patriots do? And maybe it didn't help them as much because just their offensive coordinator situation was really weird. But they said we're going to go get Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry,
and
right?
they drafted 2 tight ends in the same draft too,
right? Like so. If you legitimately want a tight end 2, stop thinking you can put Band-Aids over everything and go get a guy. Go get a guy that is going to legitimately be a game changer, be a difference maker. And we've seen the New England Patriots do that several times. They did it with Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. You've seen it with some of these other teams where it's like, hey, we're going to really go out there and have some legit 2 tight end sets. And the 49ers like, well, we'll go over Ross Dwelly. Even though we don't really like what we're getting, we're managing with it. So we'll keep going with that. But heck nah, man, like go get you a 3rd round tight. This is a deep tight end class. Like go get you a high. Stop trying to get the Charlie Warners. Charlie Warner was never that guy.
No, we've seen it. Yeah. To answer the Charlie Warner question, he was never really that guy coming out. I wasn't super high on him. He was a try-hard blocker, showed some testing athleticism. So I think the 49ers were like, well, look, we found one guy who was underutilized as a passer in college and was a try-hard guy and had pretty good testing numbers and turned out to be a star in George Kittle. So let's kind of see if we can find that same sort of a vibe, a guy who's a willing blocker, who's got some athleticism. Charlie Warner's never really that guy. And so I think he is who he is. And he hasn't even turned out to be that good of a blocker either. He's just not that physically imposing. Ross Dwelly's been nice, but he's he's a tight end 3 type of guy.
He always felt like a tight end 3.
Yeah.
Like, or 4, right? Like just a guy who's kind of like, can he make it? Remember there was a guy, wasn't it Carrier? 49ers had him in preseason, then he went to the Raiders and actually like kind of
Kerry. Yeah, he's like a bulked up wide receiver.
Yeah, like did kind of well, but like it feels like that where it's like, yeah, might be on your team, might not. If he's your 3rd tight end or maybe like practice squad or 4th tight end, like cool. Like that's what it feels like Charlie Warner is. Where it's like, yeah, you're cool, but is anybody mentioning you in any type of like legit game plan? Like when they're game planning against the 49ers, they're not thinking about a Charlie Warner.
Oh no.
So go get somebody that like they are thinking about. If and maybe they just don't want this, But if you want a legit tight end too. Now, if you don't, then all right. But the way that they're looking at this class of tight ends clearly is like, all right, let's stop messing around.
And it's a good tight end class to do that. And
Yeah.
where the 49ers are drafting, we've talked a lot about this, and we've scouted a lot of players, Croc, and it's hard to find a really good edge or a really good offensive tackle. But you can find in the area where the 49ers have 6 picks in the rounds 3 and round 5, you can find a tight end. You can find an interior offensive lineman. You can find a safety. Harder to find maybe a star corner, but you might be able to find a nickel type corner, or the positions where you can find starters that don't need to be, super clean from a physical standpoint or from a production standpoint. And so maybe that's the direction the 49ers are going, knowing that they're not going to be able to get a really good tackle or a really good, edge player late in the 3rd round.
I hate that I kind of go in on them right there, but because they've been so good with roster building. And if anybody, if I trust anybody, I trust this regime.
He's been the second best tight end over the Shanahan era. Pretty easily.
Charlie Warner?
No, I thought you said Dwelly.
Oh, Dwelly?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like they're always trying to replace him. They're just trying to replace him with the wrong guys. It's like, yeah, hey, Dwelly, solid, had a game where he scored 3 touchdowns. They called 1 back, so it ended up being 2 touchdowns. Hey, man, he can play well, but let's replace him with Charlie Warner.
Croc hates Charlie Warner.
No, I don't. I just don't. I just think he's just kind of there. I think he's a solid football player, right? Anybody that's he's on the team right now. You could write his name on the roster with a permanent marker. I feel like he's gonna be there. He is that type of guy. But again, you're having Tyler Kroft come in and try to block legit edge rushers because of what I felt like that's what Charlie Warner was supposed to be.
Yeah, that should have been him.
You got my quarterback hurt. Yeah, now he got a robotic elbow.
Maybe that's why they're like, all right, let's get another tight end here. We can't get our quarterbacks killed.
Well, that's the issue too. You're getting another tight end to just be like, hey, go out here and block this edge rusher from the Eagles that had 100 sacks this season.
Yeah, no big deal. Just end it's only going to end our season if you whiff on this block.
Right.
No
pressure.
I feel like Dwelly's going to stick for a while. Dwelly's going to be like the new Dante Johnson, but on offense.
I can see that. Again, I said, he can
play
that fullback position as well. I like Dwelly, which is kind of weird too, because Dwelly feels like solid. Is he a legit tight end too? I don't know, but I feel like they kind of forget about him sometimes.
Yeah.
So he must be doing something wrong.
He has to re-earn it every single year. And Dwelly and Warner are NFL tight ends, but they could be improved upon. I think that's what the 49ers are trying to do. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day. Check out everything else the network has to offer. Locked On NFL Scouting, Locked On NFL Draft. Stay tuned for the 2023 Locked On Mock Draft Special featuring everybody on the network, including Croc and I. Will be back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.